Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here with Meltem Kusku. She's the author of Screen Children. She was born in Istanbul in 1972 as the first child of a teacher mother and an engineer father. She started her university education as a mechanical engineer at Bozaksisi University in Istanbul and moved to the Department of Business Administration after 2 years. She started working as a consumer and market researcher at the Istanbul office of Procter and Gamble right after graduation. And I believe you worked there for over 25 years, right?
24 years to be exact.
24
Yeah.
years. She moved to Germany for a short time in 2000 and then to Switzerland. And during her 24-year research career, spoke with many consumers around the world, conducted hundreds of research studies, gave many presentations and training sessions, and led research budgets of millions of dollars and teams of dozens of people. She left the company in June of 2019, currently lives in Geneva with her husband and two children, and is undertaking a master's degree in psychological counseling. Thank you so much. I was delighted to get your. It's based on hard science, but easy to read and understand, and the perfect book for parents to understand how screens are affecting our children and what we can do. So I would love to hear from you about how you decided to write this book.
Thank you so much, Theodora, and thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor to be here for me. I'm raising two children in this world surrounded by digital screens. They are 15 and 6 years old now. I myself didn't grow up in such a world. When I was a child, we had only one television with a single channel, which was turned on only in the evenings. But now, we are surrounded with many screens. In our low-tech home, we are not a particularly high-tech family. We have one television, three computers, one iPad, three mobile phones. So one has the opportunity to be always on. And we are the first generation of parents raising children in this digital age. My parents didn't have the challenges that I'm facing. So I cannot call my mom and ask whenever I face a challenge. And things are changing very fast. We didn't have a mobile phone 14 years ago. iPhone was launched 14 years ago. We didn't have Instagram 11 years ago. We didn't have TikTok 5 years ago. And we didn't have Clubhouse 1 year ago. We have no clue what the future is going to bring, how the social media landscape is going to look like, and also what kind of gadgets we are going to have. Elon Musk, for example, is now working on a chip that can be inserted directly into brain. So for me, it is important to do the best for my children today and to protect them. But it is even more important to prepare them for the future, which is unknown and unpredictable. So with that purpose, I started researching this topic. I read many books and articles. I listened to a lot of experts. I read many research papers. I'm a researcher myself, so I went deep into it. I realized many sources look at a single aspect of the problem and go deep on it. For example, some experts focus on addiction, some on social impact, some on physical impact through the radio frequency, electromagnetic radiation, and so on. So I had this idea to put together a book which covers all kinds of impacts and offers solutions. Most people don't have the time or desire to read a lot of different books and to do a lot of research. In this one single book, I cover the entire territory supported by scientific research. I also share my own experience, so it is relatable. It is a relatively short book. It can be read very quickly, and there are, experts' recommendations as well. It's digestible, understandable. Yeah.
It's a great going from like 0 to 100 on what parents need to know, embarking on parenthood and how to how to have how to support their children in managing this world where screens are everywhere. I want to say that, surveys suggest that children in the United States have their own mobile phone on average at the age of 10. And I remember when I got my first cell phone, I was 30 and pregnant. And I got it, this is before I knew about cell phone radiation. And I got it to be safe because I had a car that always broke down. I was working in an area of town where my husband was concerned about my safety. So I got the phone for safety. And at that time, we could never imagine if someone had said a high schooler or a 10-year-old needed a cell phone. No, I would say, for what? What would we need? What would the kid need a cell phone for? But now, if their child doesn't have a cell phone and they're 10, 11, 12, there's so much peer pressure, and it almost feels like you're harming them, or at least society is saying, by not letting them have a phone. That's where we've gotten to. It's a rite of passage,
Yeah.
and being marketed as a rite of passage by the companies. So what advice would you give to parents who are considering giving a mobile phone to their 10-year-old?
I would say that this is a wonderful gadget. You can, if you give it to your children, they will love it. It's so amazing that they will want to spend all their time with it. They will not want to do anything else. You don't need to anymore entertain them because they will not even want to spend time with you. They will just want to spend time with this thing. And there will be a few side effects. Like, this thing is going to primarily stimulate this part of their brain, which is the visual center. So they will just see things. They will not think. They will just see and get the input. It will not work. It will understimulate this part of the brain, which is the frontal lobe, which is all about thinking, creativity, decision making, problem solving, and so on. And brain is like a muscle. The parts you don't work do not grow. So it will shrink their capacity for learning, for creativity, and for paying attention. This thing is going to increase their cortisol levels. So they will be continuously on the fight or flight mode. They will be stressed, they will be anxious, they will be distressed. They will be depressed, and it will disrupt their sleep because it will play with the melatonin levels, because the blue light impacts the melatonin levels. So they will have problems falling into sleep, and even if they sleep, they will not go into deep sleep. When they look at the phone, their head is going to be in this position. Our head is on average 4.5 kilos, and when we go into this 45 degrees angle, it becomes 22 kilos. There's a 22 kilo pressure on our neck and on our spine. Our body and children's body are not made to carry that kind of pressure, so it is going to eventually cause neck problems, spine problems. And also, if you are in this position, you get 30% less oxygen in your lungs. So that's another thing. And it may lead to eye problems. We normally blink our eyes 15 to 20 times per minute. But when we are looking at the screens, it goes down to 5. And that can lead to then dryness, irritation. But also, when we are looking into ever-moving images, our eyes are working very hard, and they're only focusing the short distance. So that also has the potential damage on our eyesight, on your children's eyesight. And also, last but not least, the radiofrequency electromagnetic radiation that comes from these devices are shown to have adverse health effects. World Health Organization classified radiofrequency EMF as possibly carcinogenic to humans. And there are studies which show it increases the brain cancer chance by 300% in adults, and children have, a smaller head and thinner bones in their skull, so they are much more vulnerable. So out of all this, if you still want to give the mobile phone to your child, I'd suggest you think about it one more time.
And research published in the last few years has put forward that wireless radiation is a proven cause of human cancer and also damages the brain, actually decreases brain cells, impairs memory, and is linked to hyperactivity as well.
Yes.
There's
The
so
latest
many.
analysis, yeah, there are thousands of studies. I mean, from miscarriage to when the men carry it on their body, the sperm number of sperm reduction almost by half, to psychological impacts. There's endless research on that.
So tell us about, do your children have cell phones, and what happened? I was reading your book, and thank you so much for writing this book. But I was, the first part where you talk about what happened when you gave your child a cell phone really resonated with me, because I think that it's the story of most parents in the world. What happens when they give their child a smartphone?
Yeah. We gave a smartphone to our son when he was 11 years old. He had just started a new school, a secondary school. All of his classmates had a smartphone, so we didn't think about it. There was an old phone in the drawer. We just took it out, we put the SIM card, and we gave it to him. And over time, we started seeing dramatic changes in his behavior. At the time, I thought these were related to pre-teenage years and the new school. It only occurred to me that the smartphone may have caused those only in the last years. So what happened? At the beginning of the school year, the teachers were extremely impressed with his enthusiasm of learning, participation, etc. And towards the end of the year, they were saying that they didn't see any progress with him. He didn't really learn anything. Our relationship was also tense. He didn't want to spend any more time with us. He was retreating into, his mobile phone world. He was playing a lot of games on it. He didn't want to go to bed at night, and in the morning he found it difficult to wake up. And he was always in this irritable, stressed, anxious mood. He used to do a lot of sports, and he stopped all of them one by one, giving excuses like, my foot is hurting, I don't like the coach, I don't like the people there, and so on. So through that year, he really dramatically became another child. And then towards the end of the year, I received a huge bill on my credit card, because he played this game, Crash Royale, and he bought some coins or some things to progress in the game. And that was our wake-up call to say, no, you are too young for this mobile phone, and we took it back. And then after a month or two, he was really back to his old self, which was really amazing. And for many years, we didn't want to give him a smartphone. He's now 15 and a half, almost 16 years old. And his main argument, he was asking for a mobile phone, and the main argument was, I need it for my social relations. And we found interim solutions, like he wanted to use Snapchat, and we allowed him to load it onto his computer, and he would use Snapchat like that. I think there's a big difference between doing the social media through the computer versus the mobile phone, which you are hooked all the time. For computer, you need to sit down, it's a certain time period, certain place, and so on, but otherwise you are hooked on it all the time. But it came to a point where he said it's really impacting his social relations, because there are some spontaneous decisions being made to meet up, etc. And now we said, okay, I asked him to read my book first. So he read the book, Screen Children, and we had a conversation about it. We discussed the impacts, what's going on, and we aligned on the boundaries, certain boundaries, and certain rules. Like he would never take the mobile phone into his bedroom. He wouldn't take it when he's studying. He wouldn't take it when he's sleeping. And he has 1 hour screen time per day. We never take anything to our dinner table anyways. No computer, there's no television on, no mobile phones and so on. So we agreed on those, and only just a few months ago, we finally gave him a mobile phone. So far, so good, I should say. And I have also the 6-year-old. Obviously, he's, he doesn't have a mobile phone, and we keep him away from the screens. He watches television once a week. That's what he has, one movie per week. But he's growing in this technological world. So when we have questions, like we were curious about the fastest bird, the fastest flying bird on Earth, we look up in the Google together. So we reach technology when we need, but otherwise he doesn't have a screen.
Well, I hope it continues to go so well. And I mean, when I talk to parents who've given their child a smartphone, especially early on, it's such a similar story with kids that it's already a hard time when you're a preteen. There's already all of these things going on in your life and challenges, and then it's intensified by that smartphone. Kids can just get lost in the phone and leave the reality of their life.
Yeah.
So I'm a clinical social worker also, and I really saw the changes in my clients in the starting in around 2000, and after then, when my younger clients started getting cell phones, even the older ones, I was dealing with addiction kind of super quickly, where they wouldn't come off the screen to do all the self-care things that they'd been working on for years. Suddenly everything changed. Yeah. And I found it more challenging than anything I had encountered, because they just weren't able to get off the screen. So I guess one question I had for you were, what are the top 3 things that you do to protect yourself and your family from radiofrequency radiation in your home?
Everything I do, I learned it from you, from the Environmental Health Trust. So we started with the Wi-Fi router. We used to have the Wi-Fi router on all the time, 24 hours a day. And as I read about it, we started turning it off when we are not using it, and definitely at night, because that's when the bodies are most vulnerable to the radiation. And then we switched into wired internet. So at the moment, everything at our home is wired. We even have the adapters to connect the mobile phone to internet. So that was the one of the big steps for us, going to the wired internet. The other one is the mobile phone. As I said, we have 3 of them at our home, and they are like mini cell towers that we carry around us. So we follow your recommendations. We try not to talk like this. If we talk like this, or with air tube earphones. And sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes the phone rings and you need to bring it like this. You cannot put on the speakerphone. And in that case, at least we try not to bring it towards our ear for the first 5 seconds, because that's when the radiation is highest, when the phone is trying to connect with the cell tower. It can go up to like 10,000 times more radiation. We obviously we don't use, Bluetooth, earphones, nothing like that. And then we reviewed all the wireless devices at home that emit radiofrequency radiation. We got rid of some of them. For example, the cordless home phones, which are constantly transmitting radiation between the base and the phone. So I read that it's even giving more radiation than the mobile phones. So you don't really need a home phone these days. So we just got rid of it. The GPS running watch that I had, got rid of it. But we kept some of the things. For example, our printer, it's with Wi-Fi connection, but we use the printer maybe once or twice a week for a few minutes. So we said, fine, we kept it as it is. And we don't buy anything that emits radio frequency radiation. There are many charming toys with remote control, for example. We stay totally away from them.
This is wireless Barbie.
No.
Yes. You
How does
press
it
her
work?
and she connects to the Wi-Fi router, and it's developed for kids.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You were showing me something else, Theodore. Do you want to show it now?
Sure. So this device is it holds the cell phone here and the baby bottle here, and it's made so that parents can, feed their baby and text at the same time. It's called, I think, the Swipe and Go. And this way you don't have to miss a text, I guess. It's so deeply concerning. I easily purchased it online, and this is a real thing, a real invention made for parents. And here you have the exposure to the baby all over the abdomen. And as we were talking about before we started recording, there are so many impacts in terms of the relationship and that eye contact. Do you want to talk about what we were talking about before, about how this can impact and damage the mother-child relationship as well as children's development?
Yeah, the baby needs mom looking into her eyes with love, communicating through her eyes that she's safe, she's loved, she's held. This is not just about feeding, it's a very, very special moment. And the same is true with the father or whoever is feeding the baby. And this is attachment that is formed early on that then impacts the whole life of the baby. If the baby is just eating and you are doing your own thing, you may not establish that bond with your baby, and the baby needs it to regulate her hormones, her cortisol levels, and so on, to learn the world is a safe place. And I mean, this device, it really makes me feel very sad. I hope it doesn't sound that much. I'm sorry for saying that, but it hurts me.
I know when I had my children, I breastfed them, and people breastfeed, use bottles, however, but one of the most important pieces of feeding your baby was looking right in the eyes
Yeah.
of looking at my child, and they look right up at you, and as I understand it, those chemicals that are made in the child's brain actually develop their brain, create pathways in the brain. And I'm so glad I didn't have a smartphone, because I didn't know about this issue at that time. I would take the phone and place it actually in the sling. But now I see so many women feeding their babies with the smartphone out as they're feeding the baby, with or without that contraption. It's happening. And they're not aware, they're not informed. And this, the phone is addictive for adults as well as children. And it is eroding our society. The fabric of our society is being eroded by these screens.
Indeed, and it is becoming the normal. When the baby grows up seeing the mother looking at the phone all the time, first of all, one conclusion is I'm not as important as that thing. My mom is looking at that thing, not to me. And the second conclusion is, oh, this is what an adult is like. So when I grow up, I will do the same. And then no wonder when that child becomes 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, he or she demands a mobile phone or a screen and then hooked on the screen. So we are the role models for our children. It is very important, we pay attention to how we behave when we are with them.
Do you experience isolation from other parents to whom you explain your concerns? Like when you've started talking about this issue, how has it gone in your community?
Some people do not want to hear it, unfortunately, because people believe that everybody does it. So if there was something wrong with it, the governments would warn us. We would be warned about it. There would be boundaries around it, and it's quite comfortable, to just go into the dream world of the mobile phone and get lost in it. So some people do not want to hear the message and they show it with their body language. Nobody told me anything negative outright, but they just changed the topic and so on. And I don't insist. I mean, I say, and the ones who want to hear the message, they hear it. And there are many people who hear the message and they are making changes in their lives.
Tell me what work you're doing with schools or what changes you're seeing or hope to see in the educational setting.
I started talking to schools, giving presentations to parents and teachers at school. I started this work in Turkey because the book was originally published in Turkey like 6 months ago. So it's older in Turkey, whereas the English version just came out a month ago. It's very young. So there is awareness in Turkey about the book. And there was one school that I talked recently, for example, and talked about all these impacts. And afterwards, they came back to me and they said they want to be the pioneer in Turkey to adjust their education, like to get rid of Wi-Fi completely in their school. They will go for the internet connections everywhere. And I was very impressed with that. And then they also said they want to write letters to the government explaining what they are doing, why they are doing, and then encouraging the government to push for it. So this is one school, that took the flag. I keep on giving my message, and then let's hope, good things happen.
Thank you so much for raising awareness in Turkey. I know that in France and in China, for example, they have banned cell phones in elementary and middle schools. And the reason that they're putting forward, although they is that it's distracting from education. So if what you want when your child goes to school is to learn, cell phones are taking that away. I think you have a chapter in here called Stolen Time. It is stealing the time and the brain time of our children. I know in the United States, teachers always come up to me about all the problems with phones. And they say that even if they can't look at the phone, the kids are texting and they know how to do things with the phone, like on their lap. And the teachers aren't even aware, but then they learn later. Or teachers are being filmed when they don't want to be filmed, and it's being posted on social media throughout the day. All sorts of things are happening which are taking away from what kids need to be doing during these years. I know in Italy, there are schools that have taken out the Wi-Fi. In the United States, there's schools that have, in France, as you know, they have the default setting is the Wi-Fi is off. There's so much happening. And this is taking everyone's effort to move us to where we need to be.
Indeed, indeed. But also, I think we need to look into why people are so much hooked on the mobile phone. I'm now having my counseling hat on, and I realize that we are walking around with a lot of traumas. We carry a lot of traumas from our childhood. And when we learn that the world is an unsafe place, we live with high cortisol levels. The cortisol and the adrenaline levels are high, which causes the stress as well as a lot of health problems. Also, in today's world with the pandemic, it doesn't feel safe. People are very stressed. People are facing a lot of, problems. And then, you need an escape. And this is a very easy escape. So instead of regulating our cortisol levels and increasing our dopamine levels by doing things like going out into the nature, sleeping well, eating well, relaxing, listening to nice music, meditating, spending time with the people that we love, laughing, and so on, which does take some effort. This doesn't take any effort. I mean, I don't need to wear my shoes even. I just, go in and I escape. But the problem is, I'll talk a bit about dopamine now, if you don't mind. Like, if you live a healthy lifestyle, let's say your dopamine is like this, and it slowly, very slowly increases over time. But if you eat sugar, this dopamine jumps here immediately, instantly. But then some minutes later, it drops down here. So your level is lower. So to increase your dopamine, it's no longer sufficient to just, live a healthy life. You go back to the same sugar to increase it further. And dopamine is the hormone that makes you feel good. And the mobile phone and all the other addictive substances, they work the same way on the dopamine. They make your dopamine jump. And then it drops, and then you need to keep looking for further dopamine, which you get through a like, or by watching a YouTube video, or by playing a game, and so on. So very temporary ups, and then you go down, and then you come back again for more easy dopamine.
That's right. And children and teenagers are having those pathways and having that process happen into the developing brain, which actually can have larger impacts than when you are doing it to an adult brain. Both are addictive, but you're setting those dopamine pathways up, and they're damaging our children's brains.
Yeah, they are damaging. They are establishing the highways where they can always go into. But there's neuroplasticity, which means you can establish new connections.
Yes.
So even for addicted children, there is hope.
Yes.
Dr. Victoria Dunkley, she suggests 4 weeks detox, for example. I also talk about it in my book, which she thinks is the minimum time needed to get rid of all these habits and to establish new pathways. So it is possible, whatever the situation is with your child or with yourself. It is possible to reset everything, to have healthy dopamine levels, and have a healthy relationship with the technology.
Absolutely. Another issue that I know the teenagers who I, as a therapist, would work with would talk about with their phones. This is when phones were first happening and the teenagers were first getting phones. I remember one telling me, and now many teenagers actually telling me, about how when they're feeling nervous, they're in a social situation. And you know how hard it is when you're a teenager to say hi to a new person, or to just exist with your friends or with people who aren't yet your friends. Instead, they would go to their phone to show, oh, someone's someone's calling me or I'm interacting with someone, and they would go into the phone so they didn't have to deal with that uncomfortable social situation. And that was actually hindering them from connecting with people in the real world.
Yeah,
Sometimes there wasn't even anything happening on their phone. They just would use it as a tool to avoid having to talk to other people.
yeah. And it is a downward spiral then, because then you don't develop the skills for
Right.
social relationships which you need in life. Uh, so yeah, you escape, you avoid,
Right.
and
And,
then
and, and
you're
it's
not
very
able.
stressful holding, like maintaining that online image for many kids, to maintain that perfect, happy, you know, look on Instagram or on this, what's the name of the one you just talked about?
Is it TikTok
Well,
or
there's all the, I guess, TikTok, Instagram, and then the Snapchat.
Snapchat?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We did similar to what your family did, in that my kids did not have cell phones, and my daughter, my 16-year-old, still does not, but they can access the social media on the computer, but that helps to limit the time that they're on it. So they're not walking around with it when we're
yeah,
trying to go on a family walk or doing other things. I don't constantly have to be saying, turn that off, because there's nothing to turn off and there's no way they can be with their face in the screen.
yeah, yeah. And the other thing related to the social media, the person who posts this picture perfect pictures, she or he knows this is not the truth. So there's a split almost in the online personality and herself, and it actually feels more insecure the more perfect the picture is. I'm hearing that teenagers are going to the estheticians these days and asking to look like their picture on Instagram, their own picture, their edited picture on Instagram. So change me to that person. That's what they are asking for. The other thing is, when they are close to the camera, actually, when they are taking selfies, their face is distorted. Their face is up to 30% distorted. So they are saying, oh, I look very bad and I have a huge nose, which probably is not the case. And they want those things to be fixed. Whereas if somebody else had taken their picture, they would not look like that. But that's what they see, that's what they believe. And the other kids who are watching all these picture perfect pictures, they feel very bad about their lives because nobody is happy 100% of the time. Nobody is, beautiful and well dressed and whatever, having fun 100% of the time. So it
Right.
makes the other kids also very unhappy. When I was a teenager, I could compare myself to the other teenagers around me, which was basically at school and where we live. But now they are comparing themselves to millions or billions of teenagers in the world. And there is jealousy, there is a race, and there's no way you can win that race. So you will end up feeling bad.
That is a very good point. It's a setup from the beginning. There is no way to win.
There is no way to win. And you are pushed into this comparison and to pay attention to how you look because that's what matters on Instagram or TikTok.
I know.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I think about our society's relationship with phones and with technology like a bad relationship. It's like, it's not good for you. We know it. There's enough research that's published. There's yourself as an author and so many other experts who are putting this forward in so many different ways, talking about video addiction, talking about the physical risk, the impacts to the eyes. It's all there. And yet there are not protections in place. And society is still saying we need the next best thing. We need the next best thing. Yet we know there isn't any parent I don't talk to who sort of shakes their hand. They just feel disempowered. They need to be empowered
Yeah.
to take steps to protect their kids and to call on companies to make safer technology.
Indeed, indeed. And we also need to realize that we are dealing with a power bigger than us in a way. Like we are dealing with AI, whose purpose is to keep us on the screens. AI has beaten Kasparov in 1997 in the chess game. So, chess is an intelligence game. It's a strategic game. And that was 24 years ago that, one of the greatest chess players was beaten by AI, Deep Blue. There is no chance that I'm going to win against AI. AI is going to find a way to hook me on the screen. For example, now I see in the Q&A, there are 2 questions and it is put in red. Red is the color of danger. My brain wants to get rid of that red. So while I want to talk to you, I also want to open that messages and get rid of that red. And that's designed on purpose. There's AI working on it. There are psychologists working on it to keep our children hooked on the screens as well as us. So we need to realize and respect the technology, but also we need to realize our own weaknesses. For example, I have a weakness when I post something on Instagram, I go and check it all the time. How many people liked it? Did anybody share? Did I get any more followers after that? So that's my weakness. But I'm not weak when it comes to following other people on Instagram or Facebook. I get bored actually scrolling down. They don't grab me like that, but they grab me when I post something. So I know my weakness and I don't do that that often. I don't post something that often. So it's very important to understand where is your vulnerability. A friend of mine, she was telling me that she likes to read comments under people's posts, not her posts. She doesn't post anything, but that's how she gets hooked. So yeah, it's important to get to know oneself, I think.
So knowing what hooks you and what your weakness is, right? And I think the hardest thing is, I spend, my weakness is researching, is what is happening around the world on cell phones and Wi-Fi. And that is like a hole you can go down and you can spend forever just going into one country and reading what the government's doing and so forth. And so that's where I come to, I need to have less screen time. I think that's one of the hardest things, is because there are uses which can be useful, but it's just too much screen time. The screen has to be turned off. And some of my best times is when we lose power. And I can't go to the screen. I can't, and we're just having, as a family time together when we hadn't previously organized it, like it's not dinner and so forth. And I think that's one of the hardest things, because at least, I'm working all the time. Some people they're in professions where they're working all the time and need to be on the screen all the time. But no matter what we're doing, it's the screen time itself, which is harmful in so many ways. And it's just too much. And here we are on the screen, using it as a highway to raise awareness on screens.
Yeah, indeed. You need to be where the people are. So
yes.
Yeah. There's a statistic from 2019 which says people on average spend 3 hours 15 minutes on their mobiles, and this is just mobile per day. 3 hours 15 minutes. And if you calculate how much 3 hours 15 minutes would make over 60 years, for example, assuming people sleep 8 hours per day, it would be 12 years. So you just sleep 8 hours and the remaining time you spend on your mobile phone for 12 years through a period of 6 years. 12 years, whatever I would do in 12 years, I would be the world expert on it. I could write, 10 books. I could solve the world hunger problem, maybe. if I just planted trees, I would change the climate in a city or in an area. So if you dimensionalize it like that, and this is just mobile phones, and this is 2019, I think nowadays it's much higher than that because we have less opportunity to do other things outside. And if you add all of them up, I think in Turkey, we are spending 8 hours per day on internet, total screens. And 8 hours per day out of 6 years, it makes 30 years. I mean, when I'm towards the end of my life, I don't want to say that I spent half of my life looking at the screens.
Right. I know. And it's mind-boggling. I mean, I feel like, as you know, people used to always ask the question, well, what do you want? If there a genie came, what would you want from from someone if you had a magic wish? And I know now what I want is time. Like, that's what I want. I want more time to do the things that I want to accomplish, or to be with my family. And and it's stealing our time.
It is. It is. But I find it difficult to restrict it when you just focus on that. There's this Stephen Covey's big rocks concept. Like, if you think you have a bucket and you have rocks and you have sand, let's say rocks represent big priorities in life. For a child, it could be, for me, for my children, it would be like school, it would be sleep, and maybe sports. And the sand is activities that may be fun, but they don't really build him in any way. And screens would be sand. And Covey says that and shows that if you first put the sand, there will not be place left for the big rocks. But if you first put the big rocks, and then you fit in however much sand is there. So you need to really decide what are the top priorities you want for yourself and your children. You first do them, and then the remaining time, you can put in sand, but you don't start with the sand and let it take over the whole bucket.
That's a great metaphor. Having a model school to propose is great. How did you convince the administration of the school to be inspired to set the bar on this issue of wireless in schools? What do
Yeah.
you think was the most relevant pieces of information to present?
I gave a holistic presentation because I found out that if I start directly talking about Wi-Fi, some people are not that receptive of the message and you turn them off. So I explained many things that I covered here. I took them through it. And then I actually directed them to your website, to the Environmental Health Trust website. And I directed to certain parts, especially. You have a lot of wonderful materials for the schools, a lot of infographics, very, very easy to read. And they may be actually using those at the school to inform parents as well. They were going to get in touch with you. So for me, it's not like I have to convince that school. I present the information and they got it. Because when you talk with the science, with the scientific research behind it, and I have, no benefit in this. I'm really, doing it for the health of our children, and we share the same purpose. They want to do the best as well. So they just ran with it.
That's great. I look forward to hearing more about what happens. I know that some of the foremost researchers on this issue are Turkish. Suleiman Kaplan and Professor Dastag have published research looking at the impact to the brain, finding decreased brain cells in rodents that are exposed, and their research is cutting edge. We have it on our website at ehtrust.org under the section on brain development, because it's important for people to be aware of this research showing damage to the brain from legally allowed levels of radiofrequency radiation. I also know, and I actually don't know the status of this, but in Turkey, there have been rules proposed related to cell phones. At first, this was about a decade ago now, they were looking at not having restrictions on kids with cell phones up to past 10 years old. And then I saw that, and this is all in the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization EMF project actually has a section where all the different countries put forward reports every couple years about what's going on, what science they're putting forward, what laws are proposed or laws that are passed, or maybe they're measuring radio frequency radiation, like from cell towers, and they say, here's where our radiation monitoring is, here's how you access it. But I saw the change in the reports over the years, and the last law that was proposed, not passed at the time, was looking at the age of 7, at having rules that addressed kids using cell phones at 7, but the age kept going down, right? Because a decade ago, we would never have, what would a middle schooler need with a cell phone? I mean, what could we conceive at that time that they would need? And now it changed to 7. But I'm thankful they're even looking at it, because here in the United States, we have phones, and like this is a kid watch that acts as a phone for kids. And all of these wireless toys, like the wireless Barbie, and all these just used by infants.
Yeah.
So.
Unfortunately, it's not that different in Turkey. I mean, even the 6 months olds are being given iPads, for example. And the reason is simple. Everybody is doing it.
Right.
So why not? I don't want my child to stay behind. Everybody has iPhone. I don't want him to feel bad. There are people who borrow money from bank to be able to buy an iPhone or the latest technology to their children. So it's all comparative. It's unfortunately not good.
This has happened in the last decade, because it wasn't this way around the world. And it's happened not because of people's weakness. It's because I believe, it's the companies are promoting it as such, putting forward all of these advertisements as if you have to have one. And they're making it so that then people are drinking up that information. And here we are, where we know, I mean, the science shows that having more screen time does not result in those developmental gains that you want to see in kids. In fact, it takes away from that. You cited that at the beginning of the talk, and it's all in your book in understandable terms. So there's all of these impacts. You haven't even hit all of them because there's so many. I mean, it goes on and on. The research does not show that screens are good for kids, the overuse of screens, the way we're using them. If anything, less screens and a more moderate use of screens is needed. And it seems like we're going in the opposite direction of what the science is telling us.
Indeed. And the people who develop these technologies, they protect their children. Bill Gates didn't give phones to his own children until they are 14 years old.
Right.
And even after that, he restricted that. So, yeah. And they are not telling us, give your children, phone when they are 10 years old. It's us who is doing it. But I think with awareness, we can make different decisions.
I know. First, we have to be aware. So thank you so much for talking to us. Your book again is Screen Children, How Digital Screens Are Impacting Our Kids and How to Help Them. And I'm really thrilled that we're going to be able to put this up and share your book as an important resource for parents.
Thank
How
you.
can people, do you have a website or any other resources that you want to share?
For the moment, it is just a book.
Okay, great. And that's in Turkish and in English.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And I wrote the book for parents who are raising children in this digital age. I wish I read it before I gave birth to my own children. My dream is that everybody who's expecting a baby reads it so that they can protect their children from the beginning and they can establish healthy habits early on. But I'm also getting a lot of positive feedback from teenagers, from non-parent adults who read the book, because everything that I'm talking about is applicable to everybody, every human being.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you more. You know, in talking to you, what I would love is to hear a presentation you did, or to have you do a presentation that you give to schools, both in Turkish, which then can be a resource, as well as in English. And do you speak any other languages?
No, those are the two. I mean, I speak a little bit French and German, but I wouldn't be able to answer any question at all. I might memorize what I'm going to say.
I figured with your traveling that you did. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I truly appreciate you spending your time with
I
us.
thank you a lot, Theodora. It has been an honor. Thank you.